So we'll leave this up because this is our review from last class, and we'll get into the new sections for today. No, yeah, good. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So if we can have, if you have your book with you, we're going to be looking into chapter called Essence in Man, and then we'll get started. Are we okay? We're good to go? Almost. Are we okay to, we're good to go? Okay. All right. So with that, we'll start with our opening prayers. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Varade Kama. I can hear the, if just on the computer you want to mute the desktop audio. Okay, let's keep going. I think we're okay now. Okay, so in the previous chapter, we were seeing the setup of what is the essence of man, because we were transitioning from macrocosm into microcosm, the individual, and studying them. Because up until this point, we saw the need for someone, the individual, to evolve and become cultured, to have the ability to stand above their impulses and be able to live in accordance to a higher vision. That was the theme of what we had been seeing in the last couple of chapters, and how it is important to build a nation based off of individuals that are like this. So with that in mind, now how do I actually get that individual to grow up? We now need to zoom in on what are the constitutions of that man, and where and how does the application of evolution arise from? From what level, from what standpoint, how, when, all those questions come into focus, but we need to understand the equipments I have. So last time we had seen, and I'm glad we kind of have this remaining from last class, at first we brainstormed. We hadn't yet read the chapter itself. We had brainstormed the idea that Puja Gurudev presented. The individual man has 4 different types of level of evolution from their mental standpoint. One is stone man, plant man, animal man, and man. So stone man, and when we had brainstormed some certain ideas, and then we saw its actual definitions as Puja Gurudev provided it. So what are the key features here? I think, stone, there we are. So for someone who is a stone man, they're completely indifferent, ignorant of any external stimuli, circumstance. No matter what happens out there, they don't care. They're completely stone-like to the world around them. And there is a huge, or as Puja Gurudev says, colossal lethargy, that they choose to do nothing else. They have literally no desires. We see this when, one way of thinking about it is when we see someone in the depths of depression. They completely do not want to interact with the world. They cannot handle it. Whatever drove them into the state of depression, I'm not going into that. I'm just simply looking at an example of what someone is like when they're in this state. When they have been cut off entirely, they choose not to do anything. They have no desires for anything. They just barely live. They exist through their life, but they are not doing anything. So that we see certain examples of stone man, but it's not the most common example. But then they evolve a little bit more. And here, the features that we are seeing is lethargy is still there, but at least there's some basic reactions. And especially when there are exaggerated circumstances, finally you will upheave them into some sort of reaction when it becomes extreme. And to them, there's no effort in understanding nuances of life. It's black and white. Either I do it or I don't. I want to do it or I don't want to do it. And it's very, gross. You can't have a sophisticated example or sophisticated conversations with them. Then there's, more importantly, lack of empathy and the example and no connection with others. It's just me, myself, and I, whatever I want, and when it's an extreme situation, then you'll see me react. So it's still pulling very difficultly into action, but finally we move into animal man. And in this case, we see that the intellect has awoken a little bit more. There's more viveka in determining this or that, and their emotions are a little bit more outward. Reactions have improved. They will actually do something to get out of a situation. So if we compare it from plant to animal, if there's a drought somewhere, the plant is stuck. They're not going to do anything. But an animal who's stuck in drought, they'll migrate. They'll do something about it. So this level of rajas has come in, a level of action. So another way I was comparing it to self-unfoldment, when Puja Gurudev describes a laborer, worker, and man of achievement. The worker, the fundamental one is me, myself, and I don't care about anything else. Sorry, did I switch that? Laborer comes first. A worker then is a little bit more invested. They're still seeking profit for themselves, but they realize that I have to change the system in order for me to profit from it. Whereas the one before, they say, I don't care what happens to the system. I'm just going to take. Whatever is there, I'll take. Whereas a worker will say, let me change the system so I can do something about it. So in a similar fashion, it's like the animal man. If there's a drought around me, then I'll do something about it so that I can gain from it. So they'll move, they'll migrate, they'll do something about that environment. Another one is beavers. If the river is not conducive, what will they do? They will go tear down trees, build a dam, create an ecosystem so that they can survive. So it is still desire-driven though. It is still egotistic, based on the self. Then finally we have the man, someone who has completely graduated, and I've just wiped off some of this. Here, their intellect is a lot more evolved, and go back to my notes here since I've wiped off. This is now near the end. The fourth type is one who will look into subjective layers of their own personality to reach that same sense of satisfaction. So before, it was going outward, trying to seek the results of the world, but now the one who has the intellect is now able to turn within and start asking questions like why, for what purpose, who am I? That is someone only a man can achieve. So at the very end of this, he says that these are rare few. 90% of us are here in animal man, but very few end up reaching this potential here. But the rare few, and this is now near the end of the previous chapter, but the rare few who develop a universal love and constantly engage themselves in the activity under the guidance of their superior intellect are called man. They alone can claim the prestige and dignity and glory of man. This intellect becomes the most important feature that distinguishes them from an animal. This intellect that has the power to embrace the entire universe, to discriminate between what is needed and not needed, what is real and unreal, what is right versus wrong, for the grand scheme of things, and to even have this yajna spirit. to sacrifice oneself for the betterment of others, for lack of profit, for the system to gain profit. Only man has that capacity to become that selfless. And it's important to remember, selflessness is the first stone to evolution for reaching that highest. Only man can do it because of his capacity of the intellect. So this is a quick summary of what that thought process was in the previous chapter. Now, in chapter Essence in Man, we're now getting into the technicalities of how do we describe the layers of mankind? What equipments do I technically have in order to start using it in the right way? So right now, take this as like a anatomy and physiology class. We just have to go through the body layers and understand how the equipment works. After that, we shall see the application, and because the next chapter is called Path to Divinity. I have to understand what equipment I have. What's the car I'm driving? How do I make sure I know how to shift all the gears and turn all the wheels and check all my indicators? I need to know how to drive the car. After I've commanded that, then I know what direction I need to start driving in. So I'm just giving a heads up on where this thought process is. So today it's just going to be the technical information of what is the equipment of mankind. Okay? So with that, let's dive right in. I'll start from this side and work this way. We'll read one paragraph at a time, and I might ask you to stop in between to give comments. So Uncle, would you be able to take the first paragraph, and please speak into the mic so that it can be heard online? Ooh, sorry.
A man must know his real identity if he desires to maintain a proper and healthy relationship with the world at large. Every human being is constituted of physical, mental, and intellectual equipment, and the conscious principle which lends sentience to the equipment. Human development culminates in finding one's identity with the conscious principle, the spiritual core of one's personality.
Okay. Simple equation I've put up on the board. We'll see more details. BMI, the physical, mental, and intellectual equipment, and the conscious principle. This is in, when we define Brahman, we say Sat, Chit, Ananda. So that conscious principle is Chit. And putting these two together, they each have their functions, give rise to the sense that I am me. Now, last class, I had given an analogy. Okay, let's read the next paragraph, and then we'll come to this analogy here. Amma, if you would be able to take the next paragraph. The physical body.
The physical body is the grossest aspect of our personality. The mind is the subtler equipment, and the intellect the subtlest of the three. The three together constitute matter, which by itself is inert and insentient. The consciousness is the spirit in us, which propels, motivates, and causes this equipment to function. The consciousness without equipment has no experience or no activities of its own. It is the combination of the two, namely spirit and matter, which causes the manifestation of life and activity.
All right. So, just to summarize that paragraph here, BMI. This is grossest, this is subtlest, right? Now, all these three put together are still inert. They're all matter. Very important thing here to think about this. Intellect and the thoughts we have are still matter. That should warp our brain a little bit here. And whenever we think, another example, and I might be jumping a little bit here out of context, but whenever we try to define Om, that supreme reality, some people end up saying it's supreme energy. Energy is still matter. Why? Because of our famous Einsteinian equation. E equals mc squared. E, energy, equals whatever equation. What does the m in mc squared stand for? Matter. matter can change into energy, energy can change into matter because it is still all inert. So this conscious principle is not inert. Anything that is inert belongs in this realm, not this realm. Therefore, we can never translate Om as supreme energy. So that was a side note here. We have to remember this is the matter that is inert that cannot on its own do things. Like a pipe. Pipe by itself doesn't do anything. It is what flows through it that gives function to that pipe. If it's water, if it's sewage, if it's, something else, whatever it's doing, that which flows through it is really what gives it function, but that function can't happen without the pipe either. So I'm running quickly through that analogy, but this is to show this on its own cannot do anything. Then Om is that conscious principle. It is the propeller. It is the one that gives energy, that gives, again, quotes, it enlivens that particular equipment. Therefore, but on its own, without equipment, it cannot be recognized. This chit, this is Brahman. Okay, so that's a good point that you brought up here. We use the word consciousness in a funky way because we have no other language to use it with. In psychology, Western psychology, we say consciousness, right? I am conscious or unconscious. I have a subconscious, or I have conscious, unconscious, subconscious. I think these are the three layers that they have. All of this is still related to mind and intellect. That's Western psychology. When we use the word consciousness as in terms of principle, chit, Puja Gurudev always defined chit as conscious principle. The very nature of knowing. So the example here is, in a room, let's say there is objects, right? Because the light illumines the room, only then do we see objects. If the light is there, then I say I see. Light is there, then I say I see. If the light was not there, I can't say I see. It doesn't matter what that object was. So in the same way, when that conscious principle is all there, then I can say I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. But if that consciousness is not there, that principle in itself is not there, then I can't even say I know. I am aware. I can't even say that without it being there. So this word principle is something that's beyond even the mind and intellect. Okay? So we have to be careful when we use this word consciousness, that it's not always the way we define it in Western psychology. If it's consciousness, know that it's B or M and I, thought process. But whenever you see it either with the capital C or Puja Gurudev writes the word principle, that means it is the awareness itself that is beyond mind and intellect. So I haven't yet gone into details, but just know that there's a distinction between the two. If it's not clear, that's okay. It's okay. If it's not clear, it's okay. But just keep in the back of your mind that we have to understand there's something, awareness in the terms of my mind being aware of something, and there's an awareness that is existing all places without mind and intellect. Just keep that formula in your mind as we go. Know that there's a distinction between the two. Okay? Okay, good question though. Now, there was an analogy I had brought in from the previous class. How many of you were here last class when we had teacher satsang? Fireball analogy? Sort of. You were there, but okay, fair enough. I'm going to go, if you don't mind, I'm going to go through it one more time. It'll be a good refresher. So the example here, bear with me here. I have three things here. I have iron plus fire and a fireball. Okay, so let's first start with just the iron here. It's just an iron ball. Can you give me properties of that iron? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is it, don't say taste, but, huh? Heavy, cold, hard, black. Right? Fair enough. Fire, give me properties of fire. Hot, orange, light, okay. Does it have a shape? Shapeless. Okay. Now, I take that iron, throw it into the fire, and immediately pull it out. I now have this like hot fireball, right? Give me properties of that fireball. What does it look like? What does it shape like? What does it feel like? Heavy. Heavy, hot, orange, and round. Right? Anything else to add? What about this? It glows, right? It glows. If you were to put it in a dark room, this would emanate light still. So, if we look at this fireball is borrowing properties from each one and combining it, and it's become its own thing. It is heavy because of the iron, it glows because of the light, it is hot because of the light, and it is round because of the iron. So it's a borrowed entity. Can I have fireball if iron never existed? Can I have fireball if fire never existed? No. So it is a combination of the two. This is called an emergent entity, and it has no independent existence. Sit with that for a second. It is emergent. It emerges when things combine. It is an emergent entity. It by itself, fireball, does not have its own independent existence. Independence means if I removed iron and if I removed fire, can fireball exist all on its own independently? There's no such thing. Therefore, it is a dependent existence. These are real. This is relatively real. Why am I using these words? Some of these are sat, some is maya. Maya is existence and non-existence, some weird relative existence, right? All right, where is this all coming from now? Let's apply it to this. Iron is BMI. It is inert. It doesn't glow. It doesn't illuminate by itself. It is inert equipment. Fire is Om. Fire by itself cannot take shape. Fire by itself cannot take shape. In the same way, Om cannot be recognized on its own. It needs to flow through certain equipments to see its presence. So in the same way, only when I see a fireball do I know that there was fire. I may not have seen the fire directly, but I know it's there. So that's one way of thinking about this analogy. Okay? To make it even more clear, because this is a very tough concept. These come in beginning of Tattva Bodha, beginning of Viveka Chudamani, like there's a whole paragraph on just description, so we'll go through it slowly. So after Amma takes the picture, we're gonna see this same analogy one more way. Maybe it'll bring another layer of understanding. Here, I'm going to use the example of electricity. Electricity. Om, here, sorry, let's first see the analogy. You have electricity functioning through three different equipments. One is a AC unit. AC unit. The other one is a light bulb. Then the other one is going to be Wi-Fi router. Okay, there's a reason I picked these specific examples. All right, so in this case, when electricity flows through AC, what do I experience? Cold and heat, right? Just so both hot and cold air. Then when it flows through a light bulb, what do I see? Light. And when it goes through Wi-Fi router, what do I get? www. The World Wide Web. I get access to the internet. Now, just take a moment and cut off the Wi-Fi and shut off the electricity. Your kids won't complain about not having AC or light. What will they complain most about? I don't have Wi-Fi. So in this way, can I see electricity all by itself without any sort of equipment? Try. You get electrocuted. You cannot experience electricity directly. Can AC, light bulb, and Wi-Fi router produce its respective effects all by itself? No, these are inert. Only when electricity flows through the equipment do I see these three emergent entities. So this is like fireball, this is like iron, and this is like Om. So this is another way to see this. I cannot have Wi-Fi. It is emergent. I can't have Wi-Fi without router. I can't have Wi-Fi without electricity. I need both. This is not an independent existence. It's a relative existence. It's related and dependent on both of these. So in the same way, now let's come back to this paragraph one more time and see it. The physical body is a grossus, mind is subtler, then intellect is even subtler, but they're all still matter. Then these three put together is inert and insentient. The consciousness is the spirit in us which propels, motivates, and causes these three equipments to function. The consciousness without BMI, without these equipments, has no expression on its own, whereas it is only in the combination of these two, the spirit and the matter, which causes manifestation of life and activity. So one other way to think about this is when Om or consciousness flows through all these three equipments, I feel, what is that emergent entity? It is Jiva. I am me, this individual. This feeling that I am me is actually a emergent experience. I cannot be me without my BMI plus that consciousness. So for example, when we look at death, right? What happens when we say prana has gone? Well, what's gone? That flowing of that particular conscious principle in the BMI has ceased. Therefore, we see that body, mind, and intellect still there, but it's no longer functioning. And when we say that's no longer functioning, that it is the death of the jiva. Has the body, mind, and intellect been destroyed? No. Even if you say the body decays, what happens to it? Back into the 5 elements. We do antima samskara in terms of burning it because ashes reduces it all. Fire reduces it to ashes. And with that, the water evaporates. The earth goes back into earth. The fires also dissipate. Energy, right? If you were to think about fire as energy. If you look at the 5 elements, they all return back into their original forms. So body, mind, and intellect only gets converted back. Matter never created nor destroyed. It's still in cycle. Can you say that that conscious principle has now been killed? Has been destroyed? No. It just doesn't flow specifically through those equipments, but it's still there. I will say this proof is in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan starts off his discourse by saying, the self cannot be killed, cannot be burned, cannot be cut, cannot be watered, meaning wet, right? And it cannot be destroyed. Neither of these things can be destroyed. This emergent entity comes and goes, comes and goes. That coming is called a feeling of birth. The going is a feeling of death. But has anything in reality been destroyed? No. So I hope that has warped our brain quite a bit when it comes to our understanding of what is the perspective of life and death and who am I? Because remember, that was our original question when we started this. Who exactly am I? This feeling of I am me is emergent, meaning it emerges after something happens, and it is dependent. It is not an independent reality or independent existence. So we just went into the highest ways of thinking about it. Let's continue. We'll see further description, but I wanted to place this framework in your mind before we kept going. And I just realized we spent a half an hour on this. So very quickly, if we can read through the next three or four examples, so we'll have to be quite efficient with this, okay? So Amma, if you can take a similar phenomenon.
A similar phenomenon obtaining in the objective world presents a clear idea of the structure and functioning of the human mechanism. The human equipment is like an electric bulb, a heater, or a refrigerator. The bulb, the heater, and the refrigerator have no capacity by themselves to light, no heat, or to refrigerate until they come in contact with electricity. Just as consciousness functioning through the body, mind, intellect, equipment and manifests itself as life.
Okay, next.
When man identifies with his physical personality, he merely lives as a physical being, bereft of emotions and intellectual discrimination, and he constantly engages himself in fighting, procuring and aggrandizing wealth and the objects of the world for his sense gratification. Sensual desires are insatiable. The more they are sought for and indulged in, the more they swarm in lesions. Thus, man living at the level of the body is ever agitated and consumed by vain desires.
Next one.
But when man identifies himself with the emotional aspect in him, he lives on a plane higher than that of the former. His mind expands to accommodate the welfare of others as well. The feelings of love and brotherhood for others provide him a better and subtler satisfaction than what mere physical indulgence can give. Consequently, his sensual demands surrender in favor of those whom he loves.
Okay.
A man ascends higher and identifies himself with his intellect. He develops discrimination in the light of which the emotion and the thirst for physical indulgence are dispelled. For example, a scientist or a politician fired with an intellectual idea or ideology has neither an emotional attachment to his kith and kin, nor a physical appetite to satisfy himself with while he is engrossed in this work.
So now, just to tie this idea last together before we finish up satsang here, that word identification becomes the most important word in understanding this emergent feeling. When I feel I am identified with the body, in our BMI chart, what do we call it as? Perceiver. I am perceiver. I am the one that is seeing, tasting, hearing. I am the one that is doing. It is identifying at the body level. When identified with the mind, then I say I am the feeler. I have to say it. I am feeling such emotions. And finally, when I'm identified as the intellect, what do I become? Thank you. Thinker, right? Now, when I put these three things together, I perceive, I feel, and I think, all of that put together becomes that feeling of I am me. This is who I am. It is still emergent. What is the most important word? When I identify as one of these equipments. Now from a little bit more pattern-wise, when I identify completely with my body, I am alone looking for what feels good, enjoying things with my eyes, my ears, my food that I want to taste. When I'm completely focused on the comforts of the body, I am nothing better than a stone or a plant. When I'm completely identified with my emotions, I want to feel happy, I want to feel safe, I want to feel joy, I want to feel the emotional experiences, then I am nothing better than an animal. But when I'm ready to start thinking about ideologies for noble virtues, something higher and bigger than myself, start thinking about who I am, then I have raised myself to a man. So there's a depth of which I've identified myself. So I'm connecting previous chapter to this chapter. And we shall see, we'll start with this next time. If this is the way I've been behaving thus far, then what should I start doing now? For what purpose? What level should I identify with and why? And how will that specific identification lead me to that destination? These are the questions we have to now keep in our mind before we start seeing the next section. We'll see Puja Gurudev's conclusion at the end of this chapter, and we'll head into the next one that it's tied into. Okay? Thank you again for your patience in the beginning. With that, we'll continue. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Thank you.